Alrighty, so today I'm gonna do a bit of a combination video, not only do the news of the week episode looking at some notable news that has happened within MLS in this past week, but I'll also be looking at the Gold Cup roster that Maurizio Pochettino have just released today, which is something that everybody been looking forward to see what is going to be the 26-man roster going to look like heading into the Gold Cup for the US. And just a little spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure a lot doomers out there that is the U.S. men's national team fan base are pretty much freaking out after they see this current Gold Cup roster that is released by Pochettino. But also, I will be doing the preview of the 5 games that's going to be happening with matches that is happening during the June international break. Because yes, unfortunately, despite the fact that MLS have tried their best effort in terms of not having games during the international break, it's unavoidable. There are going to be unfortunately teams that have to suffer the consequences of playing during the international break, and I can understand the frustration in terms of the players, the coaches, and even the fan base, especially the fact that it is almost incredibly unfair that they are playing during the international break. Especially, I'll talk about one team that are going to be missing a ton of players that is probably going to have every right in terms of crying foul. The fact that they have to play during the international break when they're pretty much missing half of their team heading into this game. But first of all, we're gonna talk about some of the news that has happened in this past week. So the biggest news that happened in this past week, we kind of heard about this a couple of days ago, in regards to the Chicago Fire, as they have announced that they are going to be building a soccer-specific stadium by 2028, and they're going to be building in the 78th neighborhood, which is pretty close to downtown Chicago and pretty close to where the Fire currently play in Soldier Field. Now, this is definitely a big deal considering that for a long time this neighborhood there was talk that they were going to build a stadium around this neighborhood. I heard for a long time that the Chicago White Sox was supposed to build their stadium in this new neighborhood, but because of the fact that they want public funds to try to fund the stadium, obviously the city of Chicago said no to that. But what's interesting about this move, and especially from what Joe Monsuno has done in terms of getting this deal, is the fact that this is a 100% private funded stadium, and this is kind of the thing I love about this league, and why we're seeing. If you wonder why teams have been able to secure themselves a soccer specific stadium much easier in this league compared to what we see in the other major professional league in the US, is the fact that basically we have seen a lot of these owners, they're happy in terms of pony up in terms of privately funding their stadium, and put a huge amount in terms of the stadium, and doesn't rely on public funds. And because of that, that really kind of moved forward in terms of their plans to actually build the stadium, especially with this being privately funded. The city of Chicago would just say, well, that's perfect because we don't even have to worry about the votes in terms of whether or not if the people in Chicago and the taxpayer is going to be happy the fact that they're going to vote yes in terms of building this new soccer specific stadium, and that all they now have to do is in terms of getting the votes right, getting the approval from the city council. And there you have it. The Chicago Fire is finally going to get themselves a soccer specific stadium. And there's no doubt that finally they got it right when it comes to building themselves a soccer specific stadium. I mean, I know people say, why doesn't the Chicago Fire play at their old soccer specific stadium known as Skeet Stadium? Yeah, that stadium was in Bridgeville. It was basically built in the middle of nowhere in the suburbs. And if you know one thing about building soccer specific stadium in the middle of nowhere, or just in general, building a sports stadium in the middle of nowhere with no transit option whatsoever, it is an absolute disastrous kind of option. And it's no wonder why when the Fire played their games during their tenure at SeaTac Stadium, or at least it was called Toyota Field back then, the the majority of the games that is played there is pretty much full of empty seats. Now, obviously, it doesn't help the fact that the team sucked for a very long time when they were playing in that stadium, but nobody could go watch the team play because Bridgeville is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. There's no transit option. It's an absolute pain to actually get to the stadium. But now building this stadium in the 78 neighborhood when transit is definitely going to be king, and it's also near the downtown area, so you also have the entertainment area to add as an amenity. this is a perfect place for the Chicago Fire to settle their soccer specific stadium, and it's kind of hard to believe it's taking that long before they finally decided that or at least the city of Chicago finally decided that they're going to build a stadium around that neighborhood, because again, for a very long time that was prime state for a Chicago team to build their stadium, and especially as I mentioned before, the White Sox for a very long time was thinking about building that stadium. And now they could be in dangerous now, because there's even some talk to say that they're probably going to build both the soccer specific stadium and the baseball stadium around the same neighborhood. But even then, that's going to be very tight confine. And I don't know if there's going to be enough room to build both of them. So, well, it's definitely great that the Chicago Fire, of course, are doing so. This is definitely bad news if you're a Chicago White Sox fan, or the fact that they're hoping to build their own stadium here, because yeah, the Chicago Fire, they have definitely put a huge stamp in it, and in a way that they also mentioned it's a 22,000 seat stadium, which I think that's a pretty good size for it. I mean, Chicago, when you look at the attendance that is, even during their time at Soldier Field, their attendance isn't really at that good. And there's no doubt that in the first year they're obviously going to set week in and week out, and we'll see whether or not if that kind of continue. But it's still a pretty good sizable kind of stadium, and especially it's kind of right around the sizes what you see right now with a lot of soccer specific stadium, kind of around that 20,000 range, all the way up to the 30,000 range that Nashville, of course, built themselves as the biggest soccer specific stadium in this country. Now, moving on, talking about some transfer rumors, because we are getting pretty close in terms of the European window getting close, and also the secondary window for MLS is about to open. But there's already rumors of a couple of players potentially going to Europe, starting with St. Louis, who's looking to move on from Giannis Horn and transfer him to Rapid Vienna. Now, Giannis Horn, his time with St. Louis, I mean, it's not as bad as some St. Louis fans said. Some St. Louis fans are kind of happy about this. I thought he did well with the St. Louis side, but I can also understand that if there is interest in Europe, they're definitely not afraid to move on from him. And as we've seen in this news, there is definitely interest in terms of him going back to Europe and going to Vienna. So if the price is right, they're definitely going to look to cash in terms of that, and we'll see how much St. Louis is going to get for Giannis Horn. And the same I would say about Montreal and their situation with Nathan Saliba. So there's no doubt that he's another player that even though I know this Montreal team has had a really terrible season, Nathan Saliba is one of the more hotly prospective player in MLS, and especially a guy that has Canadian national team material written all over it. Now, there is definitely talks that he's going to be going to Europe, and Anderlecht is definitely the team that looked to get him, and especially with the bid that they tried to get for Nathan Saliba. I've heard that the bid was like $2.7 million plus some add-ons. That is way too low, I think, for the quality that Nathan Saliba has. And again, this is a guy that is very highly talented, and I think he's going to have a bright future with the Canadian national team and do well in Europe as well. But for just $2.7 million for that low of an amount, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, because we talk about Montreal. The reason why they're so bad this season is because from top to bottom, everything is wrong with this team. From the ownership group, the front office, the coaching, and the talent, everything is just wrong with this. And this just another latest example of the fact that if they do accept this deal, that you can clearly see that the ownership, they don't really care about the team. They'll do anything in terms of just cash in, and kind of also just use that as almost like an excuse that, hey, we're actually developing some good talent and sell them all for cheap, even though we could have probably got a little bit more for them. And yeah, again, $2.7 million, that is way too low. I think the range has to be at least $4 or $5 million for Nathan Saliba, and even with the add-ons, which we don't know exactly how much the add-ons or what the add-on is going to be, still way too low to trying to sell Nathan Saliba to Europe. Now, moving on, talk about some injury news. So, unfortunately for Zach Steffen, oh, this has to suck for him. I mean, he was on the cusp of getting himself back to the national team. I mean, it's been an incredible season that he has had with the Colorado Rapids. Almost a renaissance season that he has with the Rapids this season. And now he suffered an injury during training camp, and now have to go back to Colorado for re-evaluation. So not only the fact that that's a bit of a blow for the Colorado Rapids, not having their starting goalkeeper for these next couple of weeks. But that has to hurt for Zach Steffen. Again, it looks like he found himself back into the national team picture after he kind of got left out because of his poor performance that he has had during his time in Europe. But now he had a revitalized kind of season. Looked like he maybe played himself back to the national team picture, and now he's suffering an injury. And what's even worse is this is during training camp. This was doing a training kind of session. You know, I always talk about how when you suffer injury during the training session, that might be two times as tough as you are suffering during a game. Because at least when you suffer injury during the game, it happens when you're suffering injury during training, especially serious injuries, that is just almost a double whammy in many ways. And I'm definitely hoping that he gets a good speedy recovery, and I hope that he might even get a shot to be invited back to the national team, even during those friendly windows that they have for now until the World Cup happens. Because yeah, I think Zach Steffen deserves another shot with the way that he's been playing with the Rapids this season and kind of a revitalized year. There's no doubt that he could definitely play himself in the conversation of the national team level, because right now, in terms of the goalkeeping spot, there is still a lot of question in terms of that spot. People have said that Matt Turner maybe locked that spot down. I'm not sure about that, especially with the way that Matt Turner hasn't really looked that good for the national team level in these past couple of appearances for the U.S. Now, the New York Red Bulls, they have now earned 500 home points since Red Bull Arena was opened in 2010, which is the best in MLS. So, congratulations, of course, to the Red Bulls achieving that mark. And I'm not surprised the fact that they have got so many points at Red Bull Arena. This team, for during the mid 2010s, they have earned by far the most point that any team has got in those years. I mean, they won the Supporter Shield 3 out of the 6 years, and when you win the Supporter Shield, you probably they win it because you win a lot of home games. And Red Bull Arena at times was probably one of the toughest place to play, and a place that is kind of a house of horror for every single opponent. Teams just whenever they go to Red Bull Arena, they're not going to get a lot of points out of it. And I know recently that hasn't really been the case. That fear factor of playing at Red Bull Arena isn't what it used to be, but still, with them achieving that many points. And again, I know there are teams around the league, especially some expansion team that have done well since that point at home. Remember, this is back in 2010, so this is before some of these good home team like LAFC and so forth. I'm actually kind of surprised the Seattle Sounders is not close to that, because the Sounders for a long time has been very good when they're playing at home as well. But apparently that's not the case. The Red Bulls are just a little bit better, and like I said, congratulations in terms of them reaching that landmark moment of getting 500 home points since the stadium opened in 2010. Speaking of the Seattle Sounders, so there was definitely some controversy surround the Sounders uh, this past week with the way that their owner were not happy about the players decided to protest when it comes to the revenue share or the prize money that that each of the team will get from the FIFA Club World Cup. So during the game between Minnesota versus Seattle, the players actually wear these game T-shirt in terms of protesting the FIFA Club World Cup in terms of the revenue sharing. And this is something that is nothing new. Even the MLS CBA and the Player Association have said that they're not happy in terms of the fact that a lot of these MLS teams are getting kind of on the short end of the stick in terms of the revenue sharing. Obviously, when you look at the revenue sharing of the prize money that is participating in the competition, the big European team obviously is going to get the bulk of the money, compared to some of these MLS team are going to almost get chump change as a result sort of it. But what's I kind of are a little confused about this is the fact that I don't know why the Sounders owner is not happy about this, because you're getting the money that you want. If anything, you probably should be supporting the players in terms of the fact that you're not getting the amount of money that you of course are getting for the FIFA Club World Cup, because after all, when you look at owners in MLS, they always want to maximize the profit and revenue, and I would assume the owners will probably be agreeing with the players in terms of the fact that they're not getting the right amount of share and the revenue from the prize money that FIFA released to all these teams that's participating in this Club World Cup. So this is kind of a very odd situation. It's not really a good look on his end. The fact that he decided to just confirm the players right in the locker room as well. That feels a little bit unprofessional in my opinion. And there's no doubt that he's also has been surrounded some controversy as well. I've heard that he is looking to try to potentially move this team out of Lumen Field and build themselves a soccer specific stadium out of the Seattle area and potentially build it in Renton or even in on Long Acres. Which, if you're a Sounders fan, as much as I know Sounders fans would love to have themselves an own soccer specific stadium because playing at Lumen Field, while the Sounders does still have among the highest attendance in the league, you just kind of had a sense as the year goes along with the crowds are kind of started dwindling than it was about 10 or 15 years ago when Sounders game would be like 40,000 plus, but now it's kind of dwindling into the own getting close to the part where they don't even get like 35,000 on a regular basis. As much as Sounders fan would love to have their own soccer stadium, they're probably happy the fact that they're going to continue to play at Lumen, consider the location is perfect, and the fact that if their owner decided to build themselves a soccer stadium out in the suburbs, then they basically learned nothing from the Chicago Fire of how that team, as I mentioned, the reason why they abandoned Siki Stadium and basically left that soccer stadium is because they basically built it in a place that is in the middle of nowhere, and that getting there pretty much is almost impossible unless you of course own a car. And we know that if they decide to build that soccer stadium in Renton or even in Long Acres, there's no real good transit to get to that besides a car, and traffic in Seattle is just as bad as it is in the Chicago area. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, so the Vancouver Whitecaps, they have also announced that they're going to be canceling the Wednesday training session. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. Let me go back to this news. The Whitecaps actually stated that they cancel Wednesday training session due to a stomach virus that lingered through the player camp when they were down in Mexico. I kid you not. This is actually the statement that they released, and I'm just thinking myself, this cannot be true, right? This can't be 2 years in a row where we have a situation like this where an MLS team go down to Mexico, must have uh, confronted with some Montezuma revenge as a resort, and now all of a sudden the players are not playing or not feeling well as they come back to their trip in Mexico, and now there could be a case that yeah, I mean we know that they're going to be already be challenged heading into the game on Saturday against the Seattle Sounders, which I'll talk about just a bit of how many players that they're going to be missing due to international duty. But now because of that, oh man, this is going to be interesting to see how the Whitecaps are going to have to deal with it and how Jasper Sorensen is going to deal with. But again, the reason why I feel like this kind of feels a little bit suspicious is the fact that didn't they announce that they decided to bring their own chef and also bring bottled waters just to make sure that they don't have this situation. So unless if the team chef decided to sabotage the team or maybe the players forgot that they shouldn't be drinking the water from down in Mexico instead of drinking their own allocated bottled water, there's no way in the world that this should be happening again. I understand that was obviously an embarrassing resort, and again, if this is of course play as a big resort event, maybe that kind of had a big reason why they weren't playing well. But again, I just don't believe that of course is the case. There is no way in the world that this is now 2 years in a row we see an MLS team going down to Mexico feeling confident that they can finally conquer the CONCACAF Champions Cup mountain, only for some mysterious virus, or in this case a stomach virus, to just kind of play through the entire team, and that's why they just don't look the same in that game compared to where they have been throughout the season. Now, the FIFA Club World Cup. Now talking about that, the tournament again. So the opening match, there are actually going to be some cheap tickets that is on sale because after tens of thousands tickets left unsold, they're slashing ticket prices as a resort. And this is not a big surprise. This is not the first time that they did this. They've done this for a lot of the matches where they are slashing ticket prices because yeah, who would have thought that fans would not be paying like $100 or $200 to just to see an unknown team in Africa playing against a team in the in the Asian region. I mean, there are some matches that you of course see that. I mean, there are also matches that you have a big South American team playing against European team, or in the case of some European team playing against these African or even Asian team. But still, I mean, it is no surprise that the ticket sale for the FIFA Club World Cup is not doing very well. It just feels like this is a cash cow kind of tournament, if anything, and that FIFA. I know they tried their best to advertise in terms of it and trying to get the hypes around this, but it just doesn't work. The fact that fans can smell this from far away that this is clearly a cash cow, and fans are obviously going to be turned off. The fact that they of course are not going to pay an incredibly amount of money just to attend this tournament. That I also have heard from fans in Europe in terms of whether or not if teams are going to take this competition seriously. And while teams will admit that they of course take this competition seriously, I don't think in reality that of course is the case. I mean, most of those fans in Europe, they probably don't even care about this competition. They just feels like this is another glorified preseason friendly kind of tournament, and as a result of that, again, I think that this is kind of almost the same mindset with a lot of fans. The fact that if European teams are just going to play their second string and third string, we might as well just kind of have another preseason kind of summer tournament. And while those of course have generated good venue revenue and so forth, at least those ticket prices is not as extremely high as what we see in these kind of games that is. And I also wonder, with this being the case, would this also means that maybe when we see the World Cup next year, will ticket prices won't be as extreme as it is. I don't think it's going to be the case because I think the World Cup, because of the prestige that it brings, it might draw much more. It might draw much more demand than what we see with the Club World Cup. But yeah, it's not really a good look for FIFA. The fact that they try to maybe thinking that they can come to the U.S. and really they just up the charges because fans were willing to pay, just so they think that this is going to be a prestige competition. And now the reality is setting that fans they clearly don't buy it. The fact that this is a prestige tournament, and not to mention the tickets price is just way too high, and just kind of almost pricing out even the most middle class kind of fans that attend these kind of games and so forth. And then last but not least, the Oakland Roots, they have named Benny Feilhaber as their new head coach. So this is going to be interesting to see a former MLS legend coaching. I mean, I just had a feeling that Benny Feilhaber was going to get into the coaching realm. He has coached with the second team of Sporting KC in the MLS Next Pro for a bit. So it's going to be interesting now that he makes the jump to the senior level and coach the Oakland Roots itself. I mean, this is a team that they haven't really been doing so well so far in the USL Championship. I believe they recently just fired their head coach because they lost to a third division team in the USL Master Cup. So we'll see whether or not if Benny Feilhaber can change the 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 resort of this team and maybe get the Roots to be much better than what they are currently right now, because ever since they came into the league, the Roots haven't really been that great in the USL Championship. Now, let's talk about the Gold Cup roster. So, again, a lot of doomers from the U.S. men's national team fan base are very upset about this. And I think the reason why they're very upset about it is the fact that this is a very heavy MLS kind of Gold Cup roster, which, again, I understand that, when you look at this roster, it is clearly missing some key players. So, we already heard about Yunus Musa and Christian Pulisic not going to be participating in this roster and decide to skip out on it. And there's even more notable names on this roster that you can see that are probably going to be skipping out as well. But despite that, I actually don't mind the fact that Pochettino decided to go with a very heavy MLS kind of team in this Gold Cup roster, mainly because when you look at past Gold Cup roster from the U.S. men's national team, even under Greg Berhalter, he did pick guys from MLS as well. And it's kind of almost like the U.S. always send like their C/B team in the Gold Cup instead of just putting their A team, that is. And I think the other thing that I like the fact that Pochettino decided to give some of these guys in MLS to be in the national team is that this also means that I would assume that the mentality of this team will be much stronger than what we see in previous U.S. men's national team camp. Because I think one of the thing that is a big problem for the U.S. right now. It's not because of the talent wise. The talent wise, it is definitely there. But what is a problem with this team is just the mentality is just not there for this team. You can clearly see there's a lot of complacency, even with some of these more talented guys that they just don't show the talent that is with this team. And I know for a long time people of course blame Greg Berhalter in terms of the tactic that he used, and maybe some might say the same about Maurizio Pochettino as well. But it's getting to a point where if we see both head coaches can't get the best out of this team, I think it's kind of the point where maybe the tactics and the head coach might not be the reason why this team is kind of going backwards in these last couple of years. It might be the mentality of the players, especially these star players that kind of have this very soft mentality, almost like this complacent mentality that, well, we're not going to try their best because we're going to be with the national team no matter what. You simply cannot drop me because of my importance on the national team level, and that's where the problem lies with this team of really going backwards compared to where we were in this current generational group, which is supposed to be the most talented generation that the US have ever produced, and I do believe that is the case. But when it comes to the mentality and just the the self belief that they can get this done, it's probably is among the weakest I've seen in recent. The mindset of this team is just not the same compared to recent U.S. team that is not as talented as this current group. But now when you bring in a fresh batch of players that hasn't had a lot of national team experience, and especially the quality is definitely not as strong as you would see with the main team. At least these players will have the drive. At least I know a lot of these players are gonna be very happy to be with the national team because of course it's a dream for them to play for the national team, and they're gonna give all their best. And this is also kind of an opportunity for a lot of these players that if they want to play into the World Cup roster, they're gonna try every way to get get that spot. So I do think that for some that might say that when you look at this roster, they think, well, looks like this team is gonna get grouped. I don't think this team is gonna get grouped. I would be shocked if this team gets grouped. I think this team will do well to a point where I wouldn't be surprised they might win the whole thing again because again this maybe is because of me being so MLS centric when it comes to me talk about this league and seeing a lot of these players play compared to some of these players playing out in Europe. But I do think that this group, when it comes to the mentality wise, it is much stronger compared to previously because you're not going to have that complacency kind of mindset with some of these players that is playing for the national team for the first and second time because these players they got something to prove. They got something to prove to Pochettino that not only they're going to perform well in this Gold Cup and maybe even win the whole thing, but they want to be on that plane to the 2026 World Cup. Well, I say plane, but they're playing in their home nation. I mean, they'll still kind of be on a plane in terms of traveling to different venue to play their game, but they want to be on that squad and want to be part of that team that hopefully just hopefully things would go right for them. I am really concerned the fact that with the way that the US have played in the last couple of window again, it just feels like this team is not ready for the big stage in the World Cup, and this is really a chance for all these guys to kind of prove that they are definitely have that mindset and even have that quality to make it to a difference to this U.S. team heading into the World Cup in 2026. So without further ado, let's look at the Gold Cup roster, starting with the goalkeeper. We got Chris Brady, Matt Freese, and Matt Turner is the goalkeeper for this team. So Matt Turner obviously is going to be the number one for this one. The backup goalkeeper, it's definitely a battle between Matt Freese and Chris Brady. I am leaning toward Matt Freese because he's done pretty well this season for NYCFC for the most part. But don't forget about Chris Brady as well. Chris Brady he has done pretty well so far, and obviously he's in place of the injured Patrick Schulte. But Chris Brady is not a bad backup option as well. But there's no doubt that I don't know if he's gonna get any minutes, if not limited minutes, because it's probably gonna be Matt Turner or Matt Freese as the two guys that are gonna be the starting goalkeeper for this team. Now, looking at the defense, you got Max Arfson from Columbus, Alex Freeman from Orlando City, Nathan Harriel from the Philadelphia Union. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the team the team name that these players, of course, come from. Obviously, Chris Brady from Chicago, Matt Freese from NYCFC, and Matt Turner for Crystal Palace. But going in the defensive area, we got Max Armstrong with Columbus, Alex Freeman with Orlando City, Nathan Harriel with the Union, Mark McKenzie with Toulouse, Tim Ream with Charlotte FC, Chris Richard with Crystal Palace, Miles Robinson with FC Cincinnati, John Token with Holstein Kiel, and Walker Zimmerman with Nashville SC. And again, there are definitely some notable missing pieces in this defensive area. Obviously, you're not going to have Anthony Robinson in this one, or even Serginho Dest. I think both of those players are currently injured right now, so that's kind of the reason why Pochettino decided not to pick them. But nevertheless, this team, when you look at the players on this team, and again, this is maybe because of me being biased because I watch a lot of MLS. I think it's a good group. I mean, the defense there might be question in terms of that. The fullbacks, I think, could be a very interesting competition because when you look at these fullbacks for this defensive line. There's some good competition in terms of that spot as well. And I do believe that the center back partnership. I wouldn't be surprised it could be Walker Zimmerman and Mark McKenzie in terms of that spot. Some might say Chris Richard might also get that spot as well, but I think Walker Zimmerman deserves a chance to be the center back for the national team. He was a rock with this team last time when he was with the camp, and I don't see why he might not get a chance for the national team and getting bulk of the minutes on the center back role. Now looking at the midfielder, we got Brendan Aronson from Leeds United, Tyler Adams with Bournemouth, Sebastian Berhalter with Vancouver, Johnny Cardoso with Real Betis, Lucas Del Torre with San Diego, Diego Luna with RSL, Jack McGlynn with the Houston Dynamo, Quinn Sullivan with the Philadelphia Union, and Malik Tillman with PSV. So in the midfield, you definitely started to see some more familiar names that are kind of players that have experience with the U.S. men's national team. You got Tyler Adams, of course, the main engine when it comes to the holding midfielders spot for this national team over the years. But there are definitely some interesting new faces, and especially I am so happy to see that Diego Luna finally get a chance to prove what it's worth. I mean, I think it is absolutely criminal what we saw in the Olympics where he was left out for the U.S. Olympic squad, and I'm pretty sure Jason Christ would probably regret doing that because I think Diego Luna would have made a huge difference to that team, and especially of just such a monster season that he has had so far with RSL. I wouldn't be surprised he might deliver that in the international stage. And this also kind of makes you wonder what is Greg Berhalter is going to do when it comes to maybe putting some of the hotter hand in MLS that is going to be playing in some of these bulk of minutes because the likes of Diego Luna and Sebastian Berhalter, they have the hot hand right now. Both of those guys have played very well with their respective club right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if those guys will really be called upon. Even though realistically, probably Brandon Aronson is going to get bulk of the minute, and the same goes for Tillman because of the experience that both those guys and the quality that both of those guys prove is much better than all most of the rest of these guys have in terms of this midfield spot. Now, looking at the forward group, this has always been a big talking point, and especially I think the biggest talking point is the number 9 spot of this team. I mean, over the years, there's always been this debate of who exactly is the number 9 of this team. So we got Paxton Aronson for FC Utrecht, so both the Aronson brothers going to be on this national team. Then you got Patrick Anjiman with Charlotte FC, Damian Downs with FC Cologne, Brian White with the Vancouver Whitecaps, and Haji Wright with Coventry FC. Now you notice no Ricardo Pepi in the national team roster. He was left out in this national team roster. I think he says that he doesn't want to participate in this roster. Decided to take the summer off alongside with other notable U.S. men's national team veterans that is not on this team. So now the question is, who's gonna get that ninth spot? I think it's got to be Brian White. I mean, again, this goes back to what I said about maybe Pochettino going with a hotter hand, especially with in MLS. I would not be surprised if Brian White is going to get most of the minutes of this team because he is just absolutely an immense right now with the Vancouver Whitecaps. Him and Sebastian Berhalter. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them will get a lot of minutes with this team because they have that familiarity with each other from the club level to dissect opponent left and right. So it would make perfect sense to link up with those two Vancouver Whitecaps players on the same team. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. This might be a breakout out season for Brian White when it comes to being with the national team. I mean, it's already been a breakout season for him with the Vancouver Whitecaps, but I think this is where he really announced himself to a point where do not be surprised that Brian White might be the number nine that the U.S. desperately needed. I mean, right now there's just so much debate about the number nine spot and the lack of number nine that this team, of course, got. I mean, some people will say that it might be a job belong to Ricardo Pepi and even Florian Balogun, another guy that decided to not be on in this roster. But Brian White could have a legitimate cause that he could definitely be right up there in terms of the conversation that he might be the number nine that could be the starter for this team heading into the World Cup and especially in this Gold Cup itself. I wouldn't be surprised he would be the starter for this team in terms of that number nine spot. Now, looking at the MLS matches during the international break, and I do apologize that this has already been a relatively long video. That's what happened when you try to combine a lot of things in one video. So we got 5 games that is happening during the international break. We got 2 games on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. Starting off with DC versus the Chicago Fire. That starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Now, I will also mention players that is missing due to international duty. For DC, they're going to be missing 4 guys. You got Boris Enel, Christian Fletcher, Mate Patola, and Kyle Robles not available for DC. For Chicago, Usmani Glasgow and Chris Brady not available for the Chicago Fire. So yeah, for the Fire, definitely does hurt the fact that they're going to be missing their starting goalkeeper. But again, you're facing against a side in DC that yeah, we know that has not been a great season for DC United, and again, it's another team that once again, like last season, struggling at home. So Chicago, knowing that they have been playing relatively well this season on the road, you expect Greg Berhalter's side could get a road win again, even if they're going to be missing their starting goalkeeper in this game. Now, looking at the other game that's happening on Saturday, which is the Colorado Rapids and Austin FC, that starts at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So for Colorado, only 2 players that is missing due to international duty. You got Wyatt Frederick and Jameson not available for the Rapids. For Austin, you got Murto Uzuni and Burton not available for this team. And really, this is the game that I think we would say that is the game where we don't really see a lot of key players for both of these sides are missing. Well, maybe besides Uzuni for Austin FC, although Uzuni has kind of had a very disappointing season so far for this Los Verde side. But nevertheless, this is a game where you kind of expect that with the way that both teams are not really missing a lot of guys doing to international duty, and especially I feel like this could be also a game where Brendan Vasquez. We talk about how some guys that are very probably are very upset that they got left out in the Gold Cup. I think you got to say the same with Brendan Vasquez and even Georgi Mihailovic as well. Again, Georgi Mihailovic, he's been kind of been on a mission lately for getting omitted from the roster that he wants to play himself back into it. So do not be surprised he might go off in this one, and especially this is kind of one of those games where with the Rapids, while they've been inconsistent this season, at least for the most part at home this season, they've been playing well. You can't say the same thing about Austin. I mean, it's been a miserable run of form. They're 8 games without a win. Their attack once again is sputtering as it is the case throughout the season, and now the defense haven't been playing as well as we've seen in recent years or recent game as well. Then we look at the Sunday game where we have 3 Sunday game including a Sunday night soccer game. I'm surprised there's actually Sunday night soccer for matches during international break. But we got the Portland Timbers and St. Louis City. So players that's missing due to international duty for the Timbers, you got Maxine Crepeau, Ariel Lassiter, and Finn Sermon not available due to international duty. For St. Louis, you have Pierce and Junior not available for St. Louis. Both of those guys not really big pieces for the St. Louis side as well. So yeah, this might be a game that could also prove the fact that yes, the last game they of course got that new interim head coach boost and got the win against the Quakes. But now this is even a tougher challenge that they have to go on the road against a Timber side that for the most part have been very good this season at home, and we'll see whether or not if that attack is actually back to being as potent as we expected. Because in the last game against the Quakes, while they definitely looked good, they were playing against one of the worst defensive team this is another game where they're also playing against one of the worst defensive teams, but they're also playing kind of a high power attack, just like what we see with the Quakes. In many ways, this kind of feels like it's almost the same matchup that St. Louis is gonna face when it comes to the opponent and the familiarity that the kind of opponent is gonna be. So we'll see whether or not if Dave Richley can get this team to their second win in a row, and the new interim head coach booth is once again going to be real, similar to what we saw with John Hackworth did for St. Louis when Bradley Carnell was let go last year. Then we look at the last two match that will start at the same time at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, starting with the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Seattle Sounders. So as I mentioned, this is the game that will feature one team that's pretty much missing half of their roster. So for the Whitecaps, no Sam Adekubi, no Ali Ahmed, no Sebastian Berhalter, no Giovanni Bavellina, no Andres Kupas, no Tate Johnson, no Jaden Nelson, no Pedro Vita, and most importantly, they're not going to have Brian White as well. It's going to be a very wounded Whitecaps team coming into this game against a Sounders team that won't have De Rosario, Stuart Hawkins, and Reed Baker Whiting in this one. So you would assume this is a game that the Sounders should win easily. Consider again the Whitecaps are pretty much playing with scraps in this one, and the depth that's been tested a lot this season under the Jasper Sorensen. This is probably the ultimate bit test where they're basically down to just Whitecaps two-player at this point. And again, I know Whitecaps fans are not going to be happy about playing this game, especially the fact that they just have that 5-0 beatdown, and most of the players still dealing with the stomach flu that happened when they were down in Mexico. Although allegedly that, of course, is the case. But yeah, they're gonna have to kind of deal with it. Do not be surprised that this might be a game like they might just kind of write off. And if they can just get a point out of this game, I think they'll be absolutely ecstatic. But for the Sounders, the pressure I think has got to be on them. When you're playing against a Whitecaps team that's pretty much missing almost everybody in this squad, you have to win this game. If you do not win this game, that could be concerning, especially when you're like I said playing against a Whitecaps team that is missing a lot of guys coming into this one. And then finally, we got LAFC versus Sporting KC that will start at the same time as well. For LAFC, they're not going to have David Martinez, Nathan Ordaz, Artan Smolyakov, and Jude Terry. For Sporting KC, they won't have Zoran Bassan and Cordogan as the other guys that not available in this one. So LAFC also will be missing a couple of key players on this team, not as much as the Vancouver Whitecaps, but there's no doubt that this is kind of a game that it'll be interesting to see whether if LAFC can continue their dominance at home this season. We know this team is a very good team at home this year, and they're facing against an SKC side that, yeah, this is a Sporting KC side that they definitely have been playing much better after the fire of Peter Remise. Not a big surprise that is the case. And while they do still have some defensive problem, do not be surprised. They can definitely put up a fight against this LAFC side that, while they've been very good this season at home, this might not be as easy as a game as they think that it could be against a more revitalized Sporting KC side. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for this news of the week. And as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news, and also we talk about the Gold Cup roster and also the preview of MLS game during international break. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.